So, something happened recently that I never thought I'd say out loud. My family and I got ambushed. Not by thieves, not by wild animals, but by a hired private security team sent in by our very own HOA. Yeah, you heard that right. And when we didn't back down, they called the sheriff on me. All over a trench, of all things. The wildest part? The only actual HOA violation out there that day was the mercenary we ended up tying to a fence post like a scarecrow with a bad attitude. But hold on. Before I get too deep into that madness, let me back up and set the stage. And hey, let me know where you're tuning in from. I always like to know who's hearing my side of the story. I didn't move out here chasing peace and quiet like some folks do. No, I came for space. For the garage. For that endless sky stretching over my gravel driveway that winds off far from shouting neighbors. I came for the freedom to build whatever I damn well pleased and fire it up without worrying about HOA noise ordinances written by people who think a 4-cylinder sedan is a performance car. So when I finally dropped that rebuilt 302 V8 into my 69 Mustang and turned the key, it didn't purr, it roared. Like thunder breaking through bedrock. The kind of sound that grabs the earth and rattles it down to the bones. Echoes chased each other across the treetops. The porch swing shivered. A hawk launched off the barn roof like it got hit with a starting pistol. It was beautiful. Marie stood in the barn doorway, arms crossed, wearing that little half-smile she saves for when I do something reckless and a little bit glorious. Joe was on the porch rocking slow, like a gunslinger waiting for the bar to explode. Then, like he was summoned by bad vibes alone, Greg showed up across the road. White polo, khakis, clipboard in hand like he was holding the Bible of suburban law. He stepped off his porch like someone hit play on a bad sitcom rerun. He stared at me long enough to make it awkward, then hollered, "You testing for earthquakes? Or just trying to violate the decibel clause again?" I cut the engine and stepped out, wiping my hands on a rag. "That ain't noise," I said. "That's art. That's craftsmanship." Greg didn't flinch. "You signed the HOA agreement. Page 16. Noise regulation equals compliance." "Yeah, I signed to live here," I told him. "Not to hand over my soul to a decibel dictator." Marie came up beside me, cool as ever. "We've got 15 acres and no one else for a half-mile. What community exactly are we disturbing?" Greg gave us that small, smug smile, the kind that shows just enough teeth to remind you he's got a lawyer on speed dial. Some folks think owning land means they're above the rules. But this isn't the Wild West anymore. You're still accountable. Then he handed me a thick envelope and turned on his heel like he'd just delivered the 10 Commandments. That night, Joe read it out loud while stirring beans over the stove. Section 12A. Prolonged exposure to disruptive mechanical noise.
Fine. $200.
Repeat offenses may result in enforcement escalation. She didn't even blink. Just tossed the envelope into the fireplace. Marie sat at the table flipping through the HOA charter. "They can't do this. Not legally." "Legal don't matter," Joe muttered. "What matters is if they think they can." Next morning, Greg came back. And this time he brought backup Tom, who looked like he brushes his teeth with spreadsheets, and Linda, sun hat and no soul, the HOA enforcer's dream team. They parked just outside our front gate and walked up the drive like they were inspecting a condemned building. Greg handed me a clipboard. "Cease and correct notice," he said. "This property is now under formal violation review." "You're escalating fast," I told him. Didn't even give us time to frame the last violation. Tom stepped forward, monotone and practiced. "This isn't personal. It's procedural." "Is it procedural to send a crew to a ranch you hadn't stepped foot on a week ago?" Linda gave me that tight, sugary smile that church ladies wear when they're about to tattle on your eternal soul. "You have the right to appeal." Marie stepped up beside me, calm as sunrise. "And does that appeal come with a fair hearing, or just more red tape until we're priced off our own land?" Greg didn't blink. "You'll be notified." Then Joe stepped out, shotgun low at her side, eyes sharp as cut flint. She stood beside me, adjusting the strap on her cane like she was getting ready to explain the law in a language they'd understand. "Just so we're clear," she said, tapping the sign on the fence that read private land, armed residence. "You three just walked past that." Tom blinked, suddenly unsure. We were invited under HOA authority. Joe lifted the shotgun a half-inch. You want to test which authority holds out here? They didn't. They left. Fast. Next morning, something new was zip-tied to the gate. Bright neon orange, hard to miss. Mandatory property review. 72 hours notice. Signed, Karen Duval, HOA president. Marie read it, then muttered, Well. She finally decided to show her face. Who? I asked. Karen, she said. The one pulling Greg's strings. Joe spat into her coffee tin. Knew it. Greg ain't got the spine to start a war unless someone's pushing him from behind. That night, Marie pulled up the HOA's back end on her laptop. The screen glowed like a war map. She's editing bylaws live, she whispered. Emergency property seizure, new clause. All it takes is 3 board signatures. My chest tightened. They're not just coming for your Mustang, Joe said low. Marie nodded, eyes locked on the screen. They're coming for everything. And that's when Grandpa Ed's words came back to me. Words he said after a mountain lion killed 3 chickens in a week. When the county said the trench he dug was overkill, he said, County never buried a friend. Next morning, I walked out to the far fence line by the stream, near the old equipment shed. And that's when I saw it. A black plastic stake, half buried in the dirt. I pulled it out, turned it over, and there on the bottom was a logo I'd never seen before. Blackbird Development. Marie's name was underneath it. I wandered out barefoot, blinking into the sunlight, still rubbing sleep from my eyes. Marie saw it before I did, the black plastic stake I'd pulled from the dirt. She stopped cold. That's not local, she said, flat as dry toast. Nope, I muttered, handing it over. She turned it in her hand, then flipped it. This is a land surveyor's marker, she said slowly, which means they've already mapped this land. My eyes drifted back toward the house, the barn, the porch swing, the tall pine tree Grandpa Ed planted the year I was born. Joe's patchy but proud little garden. That corral fence I spent 2 weeks rebuilding with my own damn hands. And then I looked back at that stake, small, cheap, official. They didn't think we'd fight. They didn't even think we were here. This wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was groundwork. They weren't negotiating with us. They were planning to take it all. And I'll tell you what, I wasn't about to let that happen. Not on my watch. Not with Marie beside me. Not while Joe still had at least 1 shell loaded in that scattergun of hers. The first fine that came in was for invasive foliage along the east fence line, which, for the record, was just a patch of blackberry bushes Joe refused to trim because the deer liked them. Second violation, unauthorized rainwater collection device. We had a barrel under the eaves. God forbid we try to conserve water. Third, our mailbox wasn't aesthetic compliant. Why? Because Joe had glued some old bullet casings to the post and called it folk art, which honestly I thought added a certain frontier charm. By the end of that second week, we'd racked up 9 violations. Marie wrote each one out on the whiteboard in the kitchen. Joe slapped a skull and crossbones magnet on top and scrawled across it in red. Paper bombs. This wasn't about fines. It was about breaking us, drowning us in paperwork until we gave up. Marie spent that whole evening combing through the HOA charter line by line. Every clause, every subclause, every sneaky little footnote. After 3 hours, she looked up, dark circles under her eyes. They're not trying to punish us, she said. They're creating a pattern, a paper trail. English, I asked. They're building justification, she replied. If they can show consistent noncompliance, they can argue for seizure. Joe didn't even look up, just took a sip of coffee and muttered, Let 'em try. I still remember where I buried the last coyote. The next morning, we heard the crunch of tires on gravel again. For black SUVs rolled up the drive slow, deliberate, like sharks hunting in a pack. Greg climbed out first, clipboard in hand, khakis sharp enough to cut glass. Man looked like he thought he was about to shake hands with the Pope. But it wasn't Greg that worried me. It was Karen. She stepped out like royalty on Judgment Day. Beige blouse, big hat, that calm smile that cuts deeper than a scream. She didn't speak at first, just held up her iPad like it was a badge. "We're conducting your pre-assessment," she said, sweet as syrup. "Standard protocol. Section 6C of the Charter." "We didn't schedule anything," I said flatly. "You didn't have to," she chirped. "Non-response counts as consent." Marie was already filming. Joe stood behind us, resting her crossbow on the porch railing like it was a newborn. Karen's crew fanned out, cameras, tablets, laser measurers. One of them filmed our barn like it was a war crime. "What exactly are y'all inspecting?" Marie asked. "Compliance," Karen said. "Lighting fixtures, outbuilding ratios, structural harmony." "You mean vibes?" Marie shot back. "You're measuring vibes now?" Karen didn't even blink, just scribbled something on her iPad. Joe called out from the porch loud and clear, "Y'all better get my good side. That camera's live streaming to the county." Nobody laughed. When they finally left, Marie vanished into the office. Hours passed. When I brought her a sandwich around midnight, I found her surrounded by glowing screens. 3 monitors, notes scribbled on 2 pages, and a 4th screen showing infrared footage from our barn cameras. "I found something," she said, her voice clipped jaw tight. She'd hacked Greg. His password was a joke. She opened a folder marked Phase Map, Asset Recovery. Files for every house on our road. Names, appraised values, risk levels, satellite photos, even resistance projections. Our place, labeled H14. High resist, high value. Marked red. Blackbird Dev, pending purchase offer. Owner uncooperative. Recommend escalation. Legal pathway required. "They've already sold it," Marie whispered. "They're just waiting for the paperwork to catch up." I didn't yell. I just marched out to Greg's side field, where he was coiling a hose like he wasn't part of a hostile takeover. Held the printout right up to his face. "Your initials are on this," I said. He went pale, like I'd handed him a live grenade with the pin halfway pulled. "You need to stop looking," he muttered. "This isn't about your car anymore. You sold us out." I didn't have a choice. Karen's brother runs Blackbird. This is what they do. 3 other counties so far. By the time anyone fights back, the zoning's already rewritten. "You think we're gonna roll over?" I stepped closer. "I think you've got no idea how big this is. We're a ranch," I said. "We know how to deal with snakes." That night, a black SUV parked just outside our fence.
No plats. No lights.
Just sat there. Joe stepped onto the porch, crossbow at her side. Marie joined her, arms folded. "They're watching to see if we crack," Marie said. Joe adjusted her aim. "Leching. I've made grown men cry with less." "You ever booby trap a pasture?" Marie asked. Joe grinned. "Once. 86. Don't ask." The SUV didn't rush off, just eased back down the road like it had seen what it needed. Next morning, 2 new finds. Aggressive gestures with projectile weaponry and unauthorized defensive installations. Joe slapped her mug on the table. "That was a damn tomato cage." Later, Karen returned.
No clipboard.
Just her iPad. She walked the front edge of the property alone, filming. Paused at the barn, at the garage, Joe's garden, the Mustang, and the field where we'd found the stake. She knew exactly what she was doing. When she finally turned to go, she paused just a heartbeat too long. Her eyes met Marie's. No words.
No smile.
Just quiet calculation. Marie didn't flinch. Karen blinked first. That night, we sat around the kitchen table. Marie folded up the phase map, tucked it into a manila folder labeled contingency planning. Joe lit a cigarette and stared out at the field, dark and still. "They're not gonna stop," she said. "No," I agreed. Marie didn't say a word, just pulled out another folder, opened a terrain grid of our land, and said, "Then it's time to get to work." It started at 2:11 a.m.
No headlights.
No engine noise, just the whisper of tires over gravel, slow, steady, like something hungry. I was already on the porch, rocking chair, cold coffee, shotgun across my lap. Sleep? That was off the table. Hadn't really slept in days. Marie was upstairs, glued to the barn cam feed, eyes scanning shadows like a hawk. When my phone buzzed, it was one word from her. Company. I stepped outside before I even replied. 3 men poured out of a matte black van like they'd been waiting all night for their cue. No logos, no plates, just black boots, gloves, radios, and an attitude thick enough to slice. One peeled off toward the barn, another circled wide around the house toward the back, and the last one took the front path like he was walking up to a damn open house. Marie slipped out the front door a heartbeat later, silent as fog, pistol holstered and phone recording. Joe? She opened the screen door in her robe, hair tied back, Grandpa Ed's old shotgun cradled in her arms like a Stradivarius. The guy heading up the walk didn't flinch. Sir, he called out, smooth and confident. We're with HOA emergency compliance. Your property's been flagged for fire hazard and multiple code breaches. I'm gonna need you to step aside for inspection. I didn't budge. You're not law enforcement. He smirked. Private enforcement. Authorized under Sundown Ridge Board jurisdiction. You got a badge? We don't need one. Joe stepped closer, all calm menace. You sure about that, son? He hesitated. Just for a second. Then she racked the shotgun. That second turned into a step back real quick. Meanwhile, over at the barn, the second guy reached for the latch. Bad move. A tripwire snapped. A slingshot rig fired dead on into his chest. Canister of bear spray, Joe's design. It exploded in a bright, burning cloud of orange. He screamed like a banshee caught in a firestorm, clawing at his face, choking, spinning into the dirt. Marie leaned over to me and whispered, "That one was Joe's special." Joe gave a toothy grin. Homemade justice. The third guy sprinted around the house, but his luck ran out fast. He hit the pressure pad Marie had buried beneath the gravel walkway. A row of motion lights triggered all at once. 30,000 lumens. The entire ranch lit up like God had flipped a stadium switch. The man stumbled, blinded, arms flailing. And that's when Joe lifted the shotgun again and let off a single warning shot straight into the sky. Not at him. Not even close. Just enough to say, "You ain't welcome here, stranger." That was all it took. They ran.
No threats. No fake bravado.
Just boots pounding dirt and panic. Their van tore off, spinning gravel into the pasture as they bolted like they'd seen the ghost of Ed himself. About 20 minutes later, 2 sheriff's deputies rolled up.
No sirens, no urgency.
Lights off, hands empty. I handed them everything, descriptions, fake license plate, footage from the cams, and Marie's timestamps. The whole bundle. They looked at it like I'd handed them a math test in ancient Greek. Sounds civil, the taller one muttered. Probably internal enforcement. They tried to grab my wife, I said, jaw clenched. Did they succeed? He asked. I just stared at him. That's seriously your line now? His partner cleared his throat. You discharged a firearm. Joe stepped forward, cool as a November wind. No, sir, she said. I defended my land. They didn't like that answer, but they didn't argue either. They left with a mumbled, "We'll file it," which meant nothing would happen. Inside, Marie had the footage back up, combing frame by frame. Her eyes narrowed. They weren't winging it, she said. Look, this guy at the back door skips the side entrance. Only spot we don't have a cam. Joe leaned over her shoulder. Someone told them, gave them the layout. They split up like it was rehearsed, Marie said. One on me, one on Joe, one at the barn. Classic 3-point breach, I said. This wasn't intimidation. Marie nodded. Nope, it was a dry run. We didn't sleep the rest of that night. We got to work. By sunrise, Joe was digging a trench behind the barn. Lined it with broken glass, Tabasco packets, and a nasty nail strip she hammered out of flattened barbed wire. I laid out a false gravel path to the side gate, laced it with pressure triggers. Rigged the whole thing to paintball grenades filled with fluorescent orange dye and skunk oil. A hit from one of those and they'd be glowing and gagging for a week. Marie updated the home network names to FBI Truck 103 and Totally Normal HOA surveillance van. Just for laughs. Subtle? No. But we weren't hiding anymore. We were baiting. That evening, Joe cooked stew. Midway through dinner, a high-pitched buzz cut through the stillness. A drone zipped over the barn, low and fast, circling like a vulture with a lens. Jo didn't flinch, took one slow sip of her tea, stood, and came back with Grandpa Ed's scoped pellet rifle. She handed me her mug and said, "Hold this." Pop. Down it went. Drone dropped like a bag of wet cement. No victory dance. No mic drop. She just sat back down and kept eating. Marie chuckled. I married into the right damn family. We buried that drone. Then launched our own, rigged with a GPS tracker and a fake GoPro shell. Let's just say whoever picked it up didn't realize the real data chip was hidden in the belly and already uploading. 2 days later, something shifted. Greg's place. Dead quiet.
No truc.
No porch light. No movement. I knocked once. Nothing. His flagpole was down. Trash cans hadn't moved. Mailbox was overstuffed. It was like someone had vacuum-sealed him out of reality. Jo stood by the pasture fence, arms crossed. Rats don't leave the ship, she said. Not unless they know who lit the fire. That night, Marie cracked another part of the HOA system, buried deep under Karen's admin code. One new entry. Phase 2 complete. Initiate Phase 3. Full transfer coordination. Marie stared at the screen. They're done testing us. Jo rolled her shoulders like she'd been waiting for the bell to ring. Finally. What do we do now? I asked. Marie closed the file with a click, locked eyes with me, and said, We make it hurt to cross that fence. Jo cracked her knuckles. Well, I sure hope they brought more than clipboards this time. They came back 5 days later. 6 of them this time. Not rent-a-cops, contractors. Kevlar vests, utility gloves, comms in their ears. One had a crowbar. Another carried a battering ram like he borrowed it from a sweat demo. And 10 paces behind them, Karen, wearing a tan trench coat, clipboard in one hand, sunglasses, and a little camera pinned to her chest like she was filming a documentary called How I Lost a Lawsuit in 12 Easy Steps. They didn't roll up in the old HOA SUV this time. Nope, they brought a white box truck labeled Horizon Utility Services. That's what it said on the side of the truck. Real official. Real innocent. Because nothing screams we're totally the good guys, like rolling up to someone's house disguised as a fake plumbing company. Jo spotted them first from the barn roof. She was chewing jerky, scanning the treeline through a pair of old military-grade binoculars. Calm as ever, she pressed her walkie. They're back, she said. And they brought toys. Marie's voice crackled back from the kitchen, clipped and dry. Copy. Engaging Operation Hanogo. I was holed up in the workshop, eyes fixed on the front gate through a narrow observation slit we'd cut into the siding. We weren't running this time. No, sir. We were waiting, watching, loaded for bear. They crossed the property line at exactly 10:44 a.m. That's when the welcome mat bit back. Clipboard guy was first. He tripped a thin perimeter wire we'd strung low across the gravel drive, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. Half a second later, a homemade strobe mine detonated, flashbang style, loud enough to rattle the barn doors and bright enough to bleach your soul. He dropped like a bag of bricks, clutching his face, screaming, I can't see. I can't see. The second guy moved to help him, rookie mistake. One step forward and HK. His boot met Joe's signature spike mat, welded rebar and rusty roofing nails buried under loose dirt. The scream that came out of him hit a pitch I'm pretty sure only dogs and ghosts could hear. He fell, caught clipboard guy in the tumble, and together they rolled into a messy pile of agony and colorful profanity. Joe laughed through the walkie. Well, ain't that just poetry? Meanwhile, 2 more had peeled off toward the barn. Bad call. They hit a waist-high trip wire Marie had strung between fence posts. Splat. A pressurized PVC rig burst overhead, dousing them in fluorescent orange dye mixed with industrial-grade epoxy, the kind that never washes out, even if you cry in the shower. One of them screamed, My eyes! It's in my eyes! The other stumbled back, tripped on a hose, and landed square in the middle of the gooseberry patch. He screamed again, not sure if it was the thorns, his pride, or both. Then Marie hit switch number 1. 30,000 lumens of yard floodlights kicked on like a UFO was descending. The whole damn property lit up like the 4th of July with a budget. Then came switch 2. The barn speakers roared to life, and what came out was, well, hard to describe. A mashup of Joe's voice, World War II propaganda broadcasts, and Orwell quotes on loop. Unauthorized entry detected. Compliance invalid. Leave immediately or face reprocessing. Glory to the neighborhood. Obey the garden. This land is not for sale. This land is a trap. The chaos was operatic. Neighbors started lining the fences. Phones out. Filming. Cheering. A guy in a lawn chair cracked a beer and nodded like he was watching the Super Bowl. Told y'all not to fuss with Grandma Joe. Across the way, a woman yelled, "World Star," and someone, God bless him, actually clapped. Joe, still on the roof, gave a low curtsy. Meanwhile, the 5th guy, poor soul, finally made it to the front porch. He raised a battering ram, stepped back, and swung. Clang. It bounced off the steel plate Marie and I had bolted behind the front door. He swore, reset, and swung again. Joe lined up a shot with Grandpa Ed's scoped pellet rifle. Thip, right to the base of the neck. He dropped the ram, clutched at his throat, and face-planted into Marie's flower bed. Not dead, just very, very done. And through it all, Karen stood at the edge of the property, silently filming. Expression blank. Hands steady. She didn't call for help. Didn't shout orders. Didn't even flinch when 2 of her men screamed for medical aid. But when one of them limped toward her, shaking and dripping in orange epoxy, I saw it. Just a twitch. Her nostrils flared. Barely. But it was there. A crack in the mask. She looked down at her phone. And that's when Marie hit send. Inside the barn, Marie stood at her command post. 3 glowing monitors, headset on, tablet in one hand. Ink squad, disabled. Porch contact, blinded, she said, fingers tapping with surgical precision. Uploading in 3, 2, click. Smile, Karen. At that exact moment, Joe triggered the barn spotlight. A 5,000 lumen beam lit Karen up like she was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award. In hell. Karen's phone buzzed. She looked down and froze, because in that moment, Marie's entire payload hit the internet like a righteous hammer. Blackmail contracts between HOA board members. Wire transfers from Blackbird Development. Drone footage from the first unauthorized raid. Internal files labeling our home H14. High resistance, high threat. The full Phase 3 property seizure flowchart. And my personal favorite, a folder titled Resistance Containment Protocol, Civilians. It hit 6 news outlets, a whistleblower board, and the State Attorney General's press tip line. 3 minutes later, #Sundown Siege was trending. Karen didn't say a word. She just turned, slowly, deliberately, walked back toward the fake utility truck, heels crunching on the gravel like it was a battlefield retreat. Her crew followed, limping, bruised, stained. One was outright sobbing. And Joe? She hollered after them, voice dripping with sugar and steel. Next time, bring cupcakes. Joe shouted after them, waving like they were invited to Sunday brunch. We didn't expect the story to blow up like it did. First it hit a small survivalist blog, the kind with camo ads and forum threads about bug-out bags. Then it jumped to local news. And by sunset the next day, it was all over national headlines. Militia family fortifies ranch against rogue HOA takeover. They called us survivalists, tinfoil hatters, unhinged. But for once, the media got something right. We were surviving, and we sure as hell weren't folding. That night, the 3 of us sat on the porch, me, Marie, and Joe. The traps were reset. Cameras calibrated. Coffee warm. The land was quiet, almost peaceful. Marie leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on the stars. We bought ourselves time. Joe gave a slow nod. Time to do what? Marie didn't smile. Finish it. Just then, her laptop pinged from inside. One new message. No subject. Just a line of text. She's not done. And neither is he. Attached was a grainy photo. Karen, standing next to a tall, broad-shouldered man at a private gun range. his wrist visible just enough to show a tattoo. A black feather wrapped around a globe. Same symbol we found stamped on the stake buried at our back fence. Marie zoomed in, scanned it, and went still. That's her brother, she said.
Dax Duval.
She tapped the screen. Founder of Blackbird.
Ex-Mercur.
No known address. Joe leaned in, squinting. Guess I'd better start sharpening the stakes again. That one photo changed everything. See, Marie dug deeper. And when she's angry, she doesn't sleep. She hunts. She traced the tattoo. Black feather over the earth. An old recon mark. Repurposed. Dax Duval. Dishonorably discharged Marine. Force Recon. Off-grid for 3 years. Came back with a new name, a blank record, and a multi-million-dollar real estate company. Founder of Blackbird, Marie said, turning the monitor so we could see. And the architect of this entire damn operation. She pulled up the map. For neighborhoods. 3 counties. Each one shaded red. Labeled acquired. Every single one followed the same blueprint. A new HOA board.
Sudden spike in non-compliance citations.
Properties seized under shady technicalities. Resold under the table. Blackbird-affiliated developers breaking ground 2 weeks later like it had all been scheduled. It's not just corruption, Marie said. It's a playbook. Destabilize. Document. Displace. Rebuild. Repeat. What about Greg? I asked. She clicked another window. Greg's name, his address, or rather his former one. A blinking location pin hovered over Costa Rica. Bought out, she muttered. Wire transfer split through 3 LLCs in Reno. Off books. Clean exit. Joe scowled. Sold us out for a hammock and a cocktail in a tax haven. What a guy. Marie pointed at another tab. Phase 3, onboarding. Sundown Ridge. They're not done. We're just the middle chapter. 22 new builds already approved. Groundbreaking scheduled 6 weeks from now. I stared at the screen. 22 families who didn't know they were about to lose everything. We need proof, I said. Not articles. Not screenshots. Something real. Something that won't disappear. Marie nodded. That's when I found this, she said, opening a final window. The staging site. Rural. 3 counties over. Filed under Dovetail Energy Services. A shell company, Marie explained, owned by Blackbird. This is where they run their compliance training. And not just training, messaging, logistics, surveillance protocols. Joe smiled slow and dangerous. I've got a good feeling about this one. Marie didn't want us going. She made that clear. But we weren't asking for permission. I packed 2 burner phones, a sidearm, and a drive loaded with Marie's malware, her version of a digital grenade. Joe packed a GoPro disguised in a bag of Werther's Originals, 3 throwing knives, and some granola bars. When Marie saw us in the driveway, she didn't shout. She just walked up, placed the drive in my hand, and said, "You won't get a second chance. If something goes sideways, upload this everywhere. It won't save you, but it'll bury them." The drive in my pocket felt heavier than it should have. The site was too quiet. Long dirt road. Chain link fencing with fresh padlocks. One structure in the center. Converted barn. Antennas jutting from the roof like a crown of thorns. We parked a quarter mile out. Crawled through the brush. Hit the fence line. I raised the bolt cutters. Joe grabbed my arm. "Look," she whispered, pointing to the tree lean. Shadow between the branches. A motion sensor. She grabbed a rock. Tossed it across the field. It bounced once, tripped the beam. A red light blinked. Swiveled. But no alarm. "Dummy zone," she muttered. "Now move." We slipped through the breach. Inside. Enemy ground. Marie's voice buzzed in my earpiece. 2 heat signatures inside. One in the entry chamber. One in the server room. Both stationary. Back door unlocked. Side hinges rusted. We slipped in low. The place smelled like oil and copier paper. Vests stacked by the wall. Polos with Sundown Ridge HOA logos still in their shrink wrap. Joe flipped open a binder labeled Engagement Sequence. Non-compliant targets. Inside, public script protocols.
De-escalation messaging. Surveillance manipulation guide.
Civic imaging tools. It wasn't just about forcing people out. They were running a full PR war. We found the H14 file in the back. Red folder. Thick. Labeled threat variable profile. High resist tier. Joe opened it. Inside were satellite images. Heat maps. Security flags. United States. Our ranch. Daily patterns logged. Joe's garden schedule. Marie's office hours. My walking routes. Even a time-stamped photo of Josh, our grandson, playing with his remote control car. A bold line underneath. Teen male. Potential neuroprofile.
Surveillance familiarity.
Moderate threat if radicalized. Joe's jaw clenched. They flagged my grandson, she whispered. I turned the page. My gut twisted. They'd flagged her too. A photo of Joe sitting on the porch, shotgun in her lap. Older female.
Probable pretester.
Ex-military relatives deceased. High confrontation risk. Joe stared at the page, quiet for a moment. That's what they think this is, she said. A confrontation. She turned the page again. Her voice dropped. This is family. The server room was just ahead. Lights pulsed.
Drive spoon.
A long green uplink cable hummed with activity. The antenna buzzed above like it was reaching out to someone far away. Don't pull anything, Marie whispered, voice sharp and focused. Don't copy, don't download. You'll trigger a tracer ping. Then what? I asked, hand steady on the drive. Inject, she said. I just sent the Trojan. Plug and wait. I slid the burner drive into the port, heart thudding like a second hand on a clock counting down. 1 beat. 2. The green light blinked. We ran. Back at the ranch, Marie was already mapping the uplink. She tracked the signal hop by hop, first to a dummy server somewhere in Colorado, then routed through a law office in Atlanta, before finally tunneling straight into a state zoning department's digital backbone. She stared at the code, mouth tight. They didn't just infiltrate neighborhoods, she said. They built themselves into the damn government. Karen didn't just hire muscle. She bought cities. Joe lit a cigarette, hand calm but eyes storming. And the sheriff? Marie gave a single nod. On the payroll. Phase 2 list. That's why he never filed your report. Silence settled heavy across the room. This wasn't just about our ranch anymore. It never was. It was about all of us, everyone who'd been pushed to the edge, boxed out by bad policy and buried beneath paperwork. Priced off land they'd bled for. Families erased by fine print. Marie pulled up the file index. We've got everything, she said. Plans, network, financials, communications. We can drop it all tonight. Go nuclear. She paused, looking at me. Or, we trace it higher. Burn the whole tree down at the roots. It'll take longer. But when we move, there'll be nothing left of them. Joe didn't hesitate. Drop it now. The sooner the world sees, the faster we cut the funding. Marie shook her head. If we spook 'em, they scatter. Lawyer up. Rewrite the charter. Disappear. I looked at both of them, then at the blinking file on the burner phone, at the live cam feed of our driveway still and quiet, at the land we fought tooth and nail to protect. No, I said. We wait. We watch. But when we move, we don't aim for the knees. We burn it all to the ground. And burn it we did. It happened at dawn like they wanted it to mean something. 2 black SUVs climbed the ridge at 6:04 a.m.
No plats.
Behind them, an armored van marked Utility Enforcement, Southern Region. Fake agency. Real threat. Marie was already upstairs at her war desk. Headset on. 3 screens flaring like radar. Calm. Ice in her tone. Joe stood on the porch, shotgun over one shoulder, thermos in her hand, .45 on her hip, steady as a church bell. They brought the whole circus this time, she muttered. Don't shoot first, I told her. She didn't look at me. Who said anything about first? Karen stepped out first. Pale trench coat, iPad in hand, same cold fire in her eyes. Dax followed.
Beard trimmed, combat boots, glove tight.
The kind of man who'd written our eulogy before breakfast. 6 enforcers behind him. Full tactical gear. Batons. Shields. Gas masks. Marie's voice buzzed in my ear. Thermal confirms, weaponized. 2 drones in air. This is full engagement. Joe looked at me, smirked. You ready to make him earn it? I nodded. Countdown started. The first drone dropped low over the barn. Marie hijacked it mid-flight, rewrote its path in real time. It spiraled hard, clipped a branch, and slammed into their second SUV like a comet. Boom! Front tire burst. Engine block torched. 2 enforcers ran to help. Right into the trench. Tire spikes. Quickset mud. Screaming. Joe fired once, above their heads. Just a hello. Marie hit the sonic spike. An old crowd dispersal tone we tweaked into a focused frequency burst. 120 decibels. Just below pain, just above reason. 2 men dropped, clawing at their ears. 1 vomited into the gravel. Dax barked orders. 2 more flanked toward the barn's north face. Bad idea. They triggered the mud pit. Waist-deep sludge camouflaged with plywood and fresh dirt. 1 raised his gun. Joe tagged him in the collarbone with a non-lethal pellet from the porch. He dropped like a sack of wet cement. Karen lifted her iPad, finger tapping. Marie jammed it. Dead signal. Karen tapped again. Nothing. Her jaw twitched. Her crew looked back at her, waiting. For once, Karen had nothing to say. Then Dax charged. He didn't shout, just raised his gun and sprinted straight at me. I stepped forward. He slammed into me hard. I stumbled, boots skidding in the dirt. You think you won? He snarled. You're a relic. A footnote. We're the future. I steadied myself. Then go ahead, I said. Write me in ink. He raised his weapon. I sidestepped. Snap. He crashed down into a net trap. Barbed wire laced through burlap soaked in motor oil. Screamed as it cinched tight. Joe stepped beside me, shotgun low, expression hard. Big talk, she said. For a man who just fell into his own damn legacy. He spat mud. This isn't over. She racked the shotgun. It is for you. Karen stood alone by the gate, motionless. Her last enforcer dropped his baton. Turned. Walked away. Marie's live stream ticked upward. 220,000 viewers and counting. Hashtag Dawn at Sundown exploded across the screen. 40 minutes later, backup arrived. Real sheriff this time. From 2 counties over. Badge cruiser backup.
No clipboards. Dax was cuffed.
Read his rights. Karen didn't say a word. Not when the flash drive hit the investigator's hands. Not when her financials went public. Not when the HOA's accounts were frozen live on air. But I saw it, just once. Her hand trembled when she thought nobody was watching. Her empire was ash and she knew it. Joe stepped close. You ever gonna say sorry? Karen blinked. Didn't answer. Joe tilted her head. You know the difference between us? Karen said nothing. I protect what I love, Joe whispered. You just collect what you hate. Then she walked away. 2 weeks later, court order dissolved the HOA.
Dax indistet racketeering, fraud, conspiracy.
Karen sued by a dozen homeowners, blacklisted from real estate for life. Last I heard, she was holed up in her sister's condo in Florida. I hope the HOA down there likes paperwork. Josh finished a certificate in digital engineering that fall. Built his own drone jammer. Named it Karen. Marie got 2 job offers in cybersecurity. She turned them both down. Why? I asked. She looked out at the fence line and said, because there's still land worth protecting. And me, I still sit on the porch. Same chair, same dirt. But every night before I sleep, I check the fence. Check the motion sensors. Check the cameras. Not because I'm scared. Because I remember what Joe said that night as we reset the last trap. They didn't come just for the land. They came to erase what it meant. We didn't let them. We mined it with memory. And when it all exploded, they learned something. Some lines? You only cross once. And you don't come back.